and I will present my screen here and we'll get to it. All right, so today we're going to do some really more fun, more exciting things with Angular. All right, so far we've been working with static HTML and CSS. Today we're going to get into what Angular really is good for, and that is for building dynamic web applications. Okay, Angular is very, very powerful, and a lot of applications that we use out there are actually built either on Angular or on a framework, a JavaScript framework like Angular. There are a few other frameworks out there, but almost everything you use on the web today that's a dynamic modern application has some Angular or React or Ember or something in it, right? That drives it and makes it responsive, and that makes it what it is. Okay. Angular is a framework by Google, and so today we're going to actually start doing some real Angular stuff. So far, the only thing we've done with Angular is ng-serve, right? So today we're going to jump into what a component is. We're going to actually explore bindings, data bindings, how to create new components, how to create new routes, and how to use data in the component and show it in HTML. All right. I am always very ambitious in the class. What I would really love to do, to be able to do, is to be able to submit that form to a backend, but I don't think we'll get that far. But I want to, as much as possible, get us to know how Angular can help us build a dynamic application, like how you can create multiple different routes in the application. Okay, so let's get to it. I'm going to come here to Visual Studio Code, which is where we're going to start, and I'll close all of these out. Okay, close this terminal. And I'm going to start up a new terminal here. Actually, I'm just going to close completely because it doesn't seem to be responding right. Here, we're going to do code space period to give me a new Visual Studio Code terminal here in the classroom folder. And I'm going to do a git startup here, see if I have anything that's changed. Yes, so I'm on track files. So it's always a good idea before you start work to do a git pull. Okay, that makes sure that you're working on the latest code base. So I've done a git pull, which gives me the latest code. All right. Now we're going to get into our Angular, and our application root here is web app, right? So I'm going to open up web app in terminal. Now, if we look in our source app folder, which is the first app we've been working on, we've been doing all our work in app.component.html, right? We have the CSS file here where we could put all our CSS. Now, there's one file that we haven't touched yet, and that is app.component.ts. Okay, this is the file that defines our component. But what's a component? If we let's pull up the Angular documentation. I don't know how many people have stumbled across this yet. But if you come to the Angular docs, right, this is a very good resource, and you typically would want to have this open. Let's come to Chrome first. Google is messing up right now in Firefox. All right. So this is these are the Angular docs, and you can come to docs here, and this gives you the documentation. It's very, very robust documentation. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to search for component, right? And there is, all different kinds of docs. There's API docs, there's the CLI docs for components, right? And then there's the Angular guide on components, okay? And then there's a tutorial on component. So let's see. Let's just open up Introduction to Components and Templates, okay? I'm gonna leave, you can come back and read through it. This is very, very good information, right? But let's look at the definition here. A component controls a patch of screen called a view. For example, individual components define and control each of the following views from the Tour of Heroes tutorial. But forget all of that. We didn't do the Tour of Heroes tutorial, but I'll explain what that means. When you have a page, right? Like, let's say this page, for example. If you look at this page, you'll see that it has different sections. You have this navigation bar here, right? You have this navigation bar here on the left. You have this center part of the page. Each of these sections could be their own view, right? So a page can be a combination of multiple different views, right? This is a view, this is a view, and this is a view. In Angular, Angular is essentially an Angular component controls a view on the screen. Let's see what we mean here. If we come into our application here, right? And we look at this component, you're going to see that this component exposes what's called, exposes a selector called AppRoot, right? This here is the selector for this component. And so if we come into our index.html, you see this here? You see this element here, this HTML element, AppRoot. This is a tag, and it is essentially a custom tag, right? For AppRoot. Please excuse me for 1 second. Excuse me for a second. I need to fix some audio. So can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. So one big deal with components in Angular is that components actually allow you to have a custom HTML element. Okay? So in the definition of a component, like we have here, nice. You can actually define a custom HTML element for that component. And that way, when you use it, like the way this is used in index.html, you just put the component there. Now, this concept, let me tell you how important this concept is. It allows you to make reusable pieces, right? Essentially, it allows you to make widgets. So let's say you have 5 different pages, right? And each of those pages has pagination. Please, can we stop drawing on the screen? So let's say we have 5 different pages, and each page has pagination. You can create a pagination component, right? And essentially add that component to each page, and it will automatically show pagination. Now, let's say your pagination shows all the page numbers from 1 to n, and you decide one day that, hey, you want to, change how it does it and let it just show the first 5 pages and ... and whatever. Rather than go to 5 different pages to change that, you go to your component, change that, and all the 5 pages that use the component will automatically display like that, right? Or let's say you have a component you've created that displays data in a table, right? If you have 5 pages that have tables, rather than having 5 different tables, you make a table widget or a table component and make it such that it is customizable. Now, if one day the customer says, hey, all these tables, we want them to be sortable, you don't have to go to 5 different pages and add sorting to the columns. You go to your component and add sorting, and all of a sudden, everywhere it's used has sorting. So components actually allow you to make reusable views or reusable, widgets in your application. And Angular components take it one step further in that you can condense that component into a custom HTML tag. So if you think about the input element, right? The input element will give you a regular text box, but if you make it a type password, it will give you a password field, right? They're both inputs, but what it does is it takes an attribute, and based on that attribute, then it can have special values. Okay? That's the kind of thing that you do with components. But beyond that, you can have components inside components. A component can have other components within it. So if here, for example, if we came into this app component HTML, right? You see this whole table here that I have here? I could have created a component called pagination and say app paginator, right? And now I have my paginator component being used here. But this is way better than me copying all the HTML for the pagination, right? And pasting it here. I have all that HTML somewhere else in the component, and then I just bring it in here. The other thing that you can do with components is that you can connect components to routes, and that is how you create multiple pages. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use components to create new routes to explore that idea, right? And then we will move from there. But before we do that, let's explore the component definition for the app component.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, I want to ask, if you want the input to be a drop-down button for you to select from, how do you do that?
There's an HTML tag for that. Okay, there's an HTML tag for that. It's actually called select. So I mean, we'll do that as we go, but not right now. So, but let's stick with this concept for now, and then we'll come back to that. Okay, so let's look at our app component.ts file. So this is a TypeScript file, and this is a component definition. Now, one thing we'll notice here first is that we have new keywords here, import. Import in TypeScript words like require in Node.js. So when you import, you're importing an external module, an external class. Okay, we talked about classes very briefly. Remember, a class is a blueprint for a type of object, right? So you can have a car class and you can use it to create a Toyota Corolla, right? Or because the class then has a blueprint for different properties and different methods. Properties are attributes, or properties like a color, right? Or a number of seats, or model, or a make. Those are properties. And methods are actions that the class can perform, like to drive, right? Like start, stop. Those are methods. So import, when you import whatever is exported from the file you're importing, right? And we'll explore that. I mean, we're going to do that a lot. You'll get used to importing, exporting. But a component is essentially a class, right? You see this class here? App component. It's a class decorated with a component decorator. When you see at whatever in Angular, this is called a decorator. Okay? If you mouse over it in Visual Studio Code, you have a definition, or you have a definition. So Visual Studio Code is helpful for helping you understand what's going on. But a component is a class that's decorated with a component decorator. And there are three basic fields that are in the automatically generated components. We have the selector. The selector here is what defines the custom HTML tag that can be used to load this component, right?
So do you mean that the select, whatever you put after the selector is the name you're choosing for the thing, or is it that Uproot is actually a concept that already exists?
No, it's a new.
It's a brand new name you just gave it.
I can call this Wally Root, and then in my markup, I add a tag Wally Root.
Gotcha.
It's totally up to you.
Okay.
Right now, and there are best practices around it. We'll talk about that as we go. But you can define a selector completely up to you, the developer. Remember, this is a JSON object. So this is a key and a value. So the key for the selector in this case is Uproot. Then you can define a template URL, which says what file is the template. The template is the HTML. Okay? So the template URL says what file is the template for this component. That is the file that defines how it looks and how it feels. And then you have a style URL. The same thing. It defines the style of this component. Okay? That is the basic definition for a component. There are other options that can be added as well. If you look at the component documentation on the Angular site, you see the details on what other options you have. But for the most part, these will be sufficient. And these are the options that are generated automatically for you by Angular CLI. And then the important part, remember what I said by import? That import, when you import something, it pulls in that file, whatever it's exported in that file. So in this case, for this component, we see our component file exports the class app component. And this class has one property with a title. Well, I export one property, which is a title, and that property has a value of web app. Okay? A property is like a variable, but it's a variable attached to a class. So it will be the class identifier dot property. All right? Any questions so far? Sounds like a lot of Greek, right? But let's play with this. We're going to play with the property of the component first. And so let's come into our template, right? Which is the HTML. So in this template here, I'm actually going to blow away everything here, all right? And we're going to create a new component that will hold all that for us. But in this template here, we have a property on our component called title, right? Remember this. I have a property called title. Why? What's the use of this property? The use of a property is that you can create what's called a binding, right? And you can use a template expression to output that property. So if I just say title here, and I save that, and here I'm going to say ng serve. This here will output the value of the title property on my component. What I've done here is I've created a one with binding, and this is what's called a template expression, right? Or interpolation. Well, that's a template expression. So you see what I get here is web app. If I come here to my component and I change this value to this is my new string, and I save it here, you see that? That's what's output. So this here, remember when we were learning and we're doing console log and console logs, right? This here actually outputs this value, right? It outputs this property on the component. So let's say I do this. I want to dynamically define my heading 1, right? I want to do that, okay? If I save this, see that? If I inspect the source for this, so let's inspect. You see what I have? I have an H1, and the value of that property is now output to it. So what's happened here is that my template is just a template, but what is actually displayed is now dynamic based on my component. Okay? If I say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And I save that, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I say this is 22/7, it is 22/7, right? I have the same template, but what's displayed now is changing based off of this property. And I can add more properties. I can say first name equals John. And remember, properties are like variables. What's happening? John isn't showing here because I am not yet displaying it. I can come here now and say first name. Remember, it is case sensitive, so I use camel case. I don't need the semicolon at the end. Sorry. And if I save that, voila. So that is how a property on a component class is rendered in the template. This is called a template expression. And this is a binding to that property. This actually makes your page dynamic. Because if I make a call to a database server and get a value back, and I change the value of John, right? If I change the value of John later, this will show the new value of John. We're going to get to a point where we perform some interactions so you can see how that works. But any questions so far? Okay. Now, for components, right? So we've seen the template and we've seen how it's connected to the component class. Now, what happens if we want to make a part of the template interactive? Like, let's say we want to click on a button and have that click do something, right? Remember, a class has properties and methods. Who can remember what a method is? Anyone?
A method is something that happens, like something that the thing does versus something that it is, I think.
Yes, something that so a class is a blueprint and a method is an action that the object can perform, right? So you think of methods as properties that actually do something rather than properties that are just there static. So let's do this. We're going to create a method on this component class, right, called change my name, right, or change name. And the way to define a method on a component is simply change name and like a function, and that creates a new method. Okay, now we want to change first name from John, right, to James. This is how we do it. Because we're referring to a property of the class, the current class is always available as this. So we can say this dot first name equals James. Okay, we've written a method. Now, what we can do is that we can, in our template, add a trigger for that method, right? So let's create a button. We're going to create a button here, and we're going to create what is called an event handler, right? Called click, which says that when we click the button, and what do we want it to do? We want it to call change name, right? I will say type equals button, right? And then let's just give it a text, change my name. Okay, and when we save this, we now have a button called change my name. And I will click on change my name. Hold on. Component is, oh, I spelled change wrong. Yeah. All right, so this is change name. I'll save that. And we click on this. Boom, change to James. If I refresh this again, starts with John. We'll click on this, it's changed to James. So what we've done here, yeah, and that is how you now create interactivity. The most basic interactivity of web application is click. And this is literally how you create a handler for a click event. Is you just say click and then say change name. And you recognize the syntax. This is you calling a function, right? But in this case, because this is the template for a component, this will call this method on the component. All right? And there, that is what this does. Now let's assume we want this method to accept and a name to change to, right? And we say, okay, new name, right? We now say this accepts a parameter called new name. I will come here, we want to change the name to new name, right? If I save this right now, and I click on this, new name is empty, okay? Let's come to our template, and let's give it a value here. We save this, and we now click on this, changes the name to James Jack, just like we have here. Okay, so what we did here is we just made this method accept the parameter, and we apply the value of that parameter to the first name property of the object. So that this first name points to this property. And in our template, we're outputting the first name property. Okay? So that is one nice capability. Here, we're only outputting the value. And here, we're actually then, we have an event, a click event, and we have a handler for the click event, which is it calls change name and it calls with the value. All right. Okay. So what about if we want to dynamically show or hide an element, right? Like, you know how on some applications you click a button and something shows up, click a button and it disappears. If we want to do something like that, right? Let's say we create a div. Let's do this. Let's create a div, right? And we say first name, right? First name, account details, right? And let's see, let's make this like an H3. What happens if I do this? So let's say I make this an H3. Let's just do some fun stuff here. This here. And move this out here. I say paragraph, first name. And here we're going to show first name again. First name is totally book. All right, let's save this. And there's something wrong here. I have a single, let's see, so this needs to be double. And remember, the expression is double. It's a template expression. It's double curlies, closing double curlies. It's a pattern or a syntax that you'll find in a lot of languages. You see what's going on? Here we have it saying John's account details, John is totally broke. If I change my name, boom, James Jack's account details, James Jack is totally broke. That's the beauty of using the template variable. I didn't have to hard code the name in here. I have it as a variable, a property, right? And so that's one of the benefits. I can have many different parts of the screen using that same property. But here's what we said we were going to do. Let's say that this div here that we have for the account details, right? Let's say we want this div, right, to only display when we click a button. So I'm going to add a button here, and let's put a div around here, around these two here. Right, and I'm going to take this button and put it in there. Now I'm going to add another button here that will be for displaying the account details. So we're going to add another button, type equals button, right? And come on. And we'll say display account details. All right. First question, who knows what do we need to do to bind this to a method in our component class? How do you write an event handler for a click on our new button? Anyone? Anyone, someone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so the objective here is for me to bind a click event to this button. What's the first thing I do? What do I need to do to the button markup to bind it to a click event, to a click handler?
Use an ID.
No. I need to bind it to a click handler. I do this, click, and I say what method on the component class will handle that. So if I want to bind it to a click handler, I will say click, right, equals show account details, right? Okay, so I've done that. Is this going to work?
I don't see show account details defined. I don't see the function defined anywhere.
Correct. So where should I define that function?
In your JavaScript, wherever your JavaScript is housed, which I assume is your, I don't know.
You're close. This is the template for a component. So I need to add that method where?
Maybe your app component.
My app component. Actually need to add that method to my app component. That's correct. And what did I call it? Now look at this. What does it say? it underlines this, right? And it's complaining about it. It says property show account details does not exist on type app component, right? So Angular CLI is already telling me, hey, dude, you're trying to use a property on the component that does not exist. Essentially, I'm trying to call a method that does not exist. So if I come to my app component TS here, and I create a method called show account details, and I save that, I will look here, Angular is happy, right? Angular is not happy because now the click event handler that I've defined here is actually defined on my component. Okay, so yep, I can click this, but this does nothing. If we want to see that it actually works, we can do console log here, console.log, change account details called, right? Or I can call that here. Save that. And if I come here now and I click this, see that? It's now there. You know, every time I click it, it calls it. So this shows me the number of calls. Right? It tells me it's been called 3 times. If I click it again, it tells me it's been called 4 times. Okay, so we have our click handler. Okay, now let's now talk about how do you make something show or hide dynamically. This is the div that we want to hide or show dynamically, right? Here, there is a template directive here in Angular called ngIf, right? And we can say ngIf equals show, let's say details shown. Okay? ngIf expects a Boolean, something that evaluates to true or false. So if I save this, it's disappeared. If you look here, Angular CLI is complaining again because it says, hey, property details shown does not exist, right? So if we come here, it's a property, not a method now. So we'll say details shown, right, equals false. If I save that, that makes Angular happy. But if we come here, you see this has disappeared. The div has disappeared because details shown is false, right? If I changed it to true here, it's shown up again. Okay, so I'm going to make it false, and then I need someone to volunteer on how, when we click this button, that shows up. What do we need to do? So details shown is false, and we've connected it so that this div only shows up when details shown is true. Right, we've demonstrated that because of the ngIf. So how do we make it such that when we click this button and it calls this method, this div shows up? Anyone? I need a volunteer. Someone volunteer.
Sounds like a job for a conditional.
Well, we already have a conditional, and this conditional expects a Boolean, and this value here, details shown is a Boolean. So details shown is either true or false.
Oh, gotcha.
So this is our
And so that means we
conditional.
need to map details shown to a button click.
Well, yes. So we already have a click handler here for that button click.
Okay.
Now, for this div to show, details shown needs to be true. So how
Yes.
do we, in our button click, make details shown true?
And button click equals details shown.
No.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Let me show you.
I feel like we need to be more like to delve more into the basic JavaScript before we understand this,
Well,
right?
this is actually basic JavaScript. What we need to do here is basic JavaScript.
Okay.
Let's break it down. So let's break out the thought process. I will answer it and you will see.
Okay.
But let's break down the thoughts. We have this property here, details shown set to false, right? We have this depending on that property and saying that only if this property is true, then show this div, right? We have this button with a click handler. What we need to do for clicking this button to make this show is that clicking this button changes details shown to true. Essentially assigns
Isn't that what
true
I said?
value. Yes, but it's essentially when you click this button, it means that in our click handler here, we want to assign the value of true to details shown. So if we come in here to our click handler, in here, we want to assign a value of true to details shown. Okay, how do you assign details shown equals true, right? That's an assignment.
Interesting.
That's what we want to do, is we want to assign the value of true to it.
Okay,
like
so the button is basically the function, and then you click on the button.
The button calls this function.
Yeah, exactly. So the button calls a function that makes details shown true. Is that it?
Yes. Now the only thing is that details shown is not declared in this function. It is a property of the object. So we have to use the this keyword, which says the details shown property of this object, set it to true. Okay.
So
if we
question, why didn't you just make details shown equals true under the export class app component? Like, why did you set it to false in the first place? Is it because you don't want
to see it?
Because I don't want it visible until they click the button.
Okay.
I want it to be invisible. So what I have right now is perfect. I want it to be like that when you first come. And I want you to click on this button that says display account details. And when you click on that button, then I show you the account details. You get what I mean?
You need that placeholder in order to be able to display account details, right? Like, what I'm trying to say is this. In the export class app company where you have details shown equals false, you need that line there in order to be able to show the button display account details without necessarily showing the what's inside.
Yeah, so what does this line do?
I guess it's the one that...
No, I want you to talk to me like a developer. What does that line do? What does this line do? What does this statement, what does it do?
It displays the button?
No.
That's like...
Because there's no button here.
No, wait. If
So,
that's is
that's
this
what-
basic
Is that
JavaScript?
the placeholder? Is that the placeholder?
No, that's basic
No.
JavaScript. That's like
This
the
is JavaScript.
That's
So
the
in
let.
JavaScript, what does this line do?
It defines the.
It's the template.
No.
No,
Has nothing
it's
to
the
do with
let.
template.
It's like the let. It defines the variable.
Okay. What is this operator called?
Assignment.
That is the
That's assignment as well.
it's an assignment, like it assigns.
That's an assignment operator.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now use that, knowing what the operator is called. What does this line do?
So it assigns the value false to details shown.
Assigns values to variable.
That is correct. This line assigns the value false to details shown. It has nothing to do with template. If you're just looking at this.
So will you say that detail shown is a variable?
It is a variable.
Okay.
It is. I mean, this is JavaScript. What is details
It's even
shown?
blue safe like the other ones we're learning.
Yes, it is a
Interesting.
variable.
Interesting.
This is JavaScript. Don't confuse yourself. This is not magic. It's not anything else. It's what you've learned so far. This is JavaScript. This is the same that you've learned. The only difference here is that we don't have the let keyword because this is the property of a class. So you don't let on these properties. That's the only difference. Beyond that, this is the equivalent of initializing a property. So this line assigns the value false to details shown. Is the same. JavaScript is JavaScript is JavaScript. If I write it on the moon, it's still JavaScript. So when you see JavaScript, don't get confused by, oh my God, what is this? No, it's JavaScript. It's the same stuff that you learned. We haven't done anything here that you haven't learned, right? These are functions and they can be called. This function accepts a parameter like all the other functions we've learned. The only difference is that these are in a class. So they are not loose variables. They are properties of a class. These are not loose functions. They are methods of a class. Okay? Do you guys understand that? So based on that.
So a class is a bunch of variables that are put together.
No, I defined a class. Can you tell me what I said a class is?
Someone help me.
A class is I use a specific phrase to describe a class. A class is a blueprint for an object. And you can create instances. Like I said, you can have a car class. And from that car class, you can create a Toyota Corolla object, a Honda Accord object. And how they are different, they're both cars. But the make property of the Toyota Corolla is Toyota. The model property is Accord. Or Toyota Corolla, the model is Corolla, right? For the Honda Accord class, the make property is Honda, the model is Accord. Well, guess what they both can do? They can both start. They can both stop. They can both accelerate. They can both brake. Start, stop, accelerate, brake methods. A class is a blueprint for an object. Okay, let's remember that. Okay, now based off of that, who can say what this line does? I need a volunteer.
So that's a variable that says that when you click display account details, you basically the variable that has been assigned true.
Now, only this line. Tell me what that line alone does. And I like the fact that you're trying. So don't keep trying and you'll get it right.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, show account
look at this line.
details. As far as I'm concerned, show account details is a function, and inside the function, you usually define. It's kind of like
Ignore
a
the
formula.
function.
It's not a function. Okay.
Right. No. I didn't say it's not a function. You're right. It is a function. But I said ignore the function. I only want to know what this line is.
And that's the defining of you're redefining the variable.
What is this operator called?
Assignment. You're changing the assignment.
So
variable
details
assignment.
shown has been assigned true.
So I'm assigning the value true to
details.
So right. So when you want to read this, remember, start with the operator. What does this line do? Oh, I have an assignment operator here, which means this line is assigning this value. You assign what's on the right to what's on the left. So you're assigning true to show details, right? Or details shown, whatever that's called. But here's the thing, details shown is a property, right? Which is why you have this keyword, which means this class, on this class, the details shown property. So you read this line as, this is assigning the value true to the details shown property of the app component class. That's how you read this line. Okay? So I need someone to read this line for me. Anyone? Actually, I'm going to call a name. Ayatomi. Is Ayatomi there? Can Ayatomi unmute? Is Ayatomi running away? All right, let me see. Let me call someone else. We call someone else. Okay, Wale, you have attitude. You've been having attitude all this while. So can you read this line, Wale?
Let's see.
Just the line.
So only that line, right?
Yes, just that line.
I really still don't want to. Okay, no.
This line. So that's line 18.
Assign the value true to this class details shown.
Yes, to the details shown property. Okay? That's what this is.
I understand.
Assign the value true to the details shown property.
That still sounds like the regular JavaScript. But what about the this dot?
It is JavaScript. The this is why it is a property, not a variable.
Oh, gotcha.
If I did this,
spelling.
Yeah, some other
Spelling.
Okay, let me just type this. I can't see what's wrong with this thing. The difference between this line and this line is that this is assigning the value true to a variable called some other variable. This is assigning the value true to a property called details shown, because it is, you see the dot notation here? Whenever you see something dot something, it's either a property or a method of an object.
I think I get it now. Okay, yeah. I remember that when you type dot something, that property is usually something that has been that exists within the
an object.
Yeah, it's kind of like length,
right?
Like array length dot length.
Exactly.
So, but in this case, we are the one deciding what detail show does.
Is. Yes. We're the one, we defined that property here. You see if I mouse over it here? You see what it says in parentheses?
Okay.
And it tells you it is app component dot details shown, and it tells you the type is a Boolean.
I
Visual
see.
Studio Code
Like
is telling you
the way length would be a length. This one is a
integer.
Boolean value.
Right. Now let me
Either
mouse
true or
over this.
false.
Mouse over this. Right? It is a variable.
The variable. Okay.
So this, you mouse over this, it counts as a property. So remember, this is a property on this object.
So I understand how the dot this makes it a property and how we could have assigned the property. But why this? Why the words this, THIS?
It's because you're referring to the current class. This always refers to the class you're working. Remember, all this code is inside this class. There's an opening curly here and the closing curly. We're inside the app component.
I see.
Class.
It's kind of like a relative link. You know, you're pointing to the one inside the folder.
To yourself.
To yourself.
You're pointing back to myself. So on me, which is a class, which is app component, I have a property called details shown.
I see. As in, don't go and look for details shown from another class.
Exactly. I don't look for it anywhere.
Anywhere else.
To this particular.
This particular one. Okay.
All right. Now I've been using the car example. Let's just explore this concept some more. Right. I've been using the car example. So here, in app, I'm just going to create a new file that I'm going to call car.ts, right? And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say export class car. Okay? Now, I want the car to have a make, right? So I'll say make. And I want the car to have a model. And I want it to have a model year. Right? And then I want it to have a drive. Or no, let's have a start. No, sorry. I need to make this is a function, right? And I want it to have a stop. Okay? And let's say I want to have an engine running. So by default, it starts off with the engine not running, right? And then I want to have an accelerate, and I give it a speed. Okay. Let's say this is my car, right? And what I want to do now is, and I want to have a speed, and of course the car starts off at rest, so my speed is 0. Okay. Now, if I come in here to my component, I can import my car class. And I'll do that by saying import car, right, from car. All right, this is how I import my car. Okay, let's use this as my working area. Since we have a button bound to this, we're going to use this method as my working area. I can say let's do this const Honda Accord equals new car, right? If I say console.log Honda, and this is a bad person, but Honda Accord dot make. And let me change this. Yes, okay, so it matches. Okay, let's do this. I'll save that and I click this button. right? I don't have a make, right? Now let's now come here and say Honda Accord dot make equals Honda. Actually, I'm not going to call it Honda Accord so you're not confused. Let me call it my car. Right? So let's change this to my car. So my car make is Honda, right? My car model is Accord. Okay. So console log my car make my car model. Let's run this. Let's click on this button. Look, make model. Now let's see what happens if we look at whether my car is running or not. Remember, we have a property here called engine running, right? So we come here and let's say console.log is my car. No, let's say my car is running. My car is running, right? And my car dot engine running. You can see that this already can see that I have an engine running property because it's referring to the other file, right? And okay, this doesn't have console here. So engine running. If I come here and I click this, my car is running is false. Okay, let's come here to this start method, right? When we start the car, we want the engine to be running. So we say this, that engine running was true, right? And then when we stop the car, we want the engine to not be running. So we say this, that engine running was false. Okay, and then accelerate to speed. Okay, so we'll just say this dot speed equals speed. These are two different variables. This is the one we're passing in here. This is the property and the object because it is this dot speed. Two different, right? All right, so we created our car object. So if we come here now and we look at our car, right? My car is running. My car is running is false. Oh, okay. All right, the car isn't running. Let's start the car. My car, let's start. Right? Let's copy this and let's put this here. And let's see what we have. My car is running is false. After I call car.start, my car is running is now true. Right? So if we say console.log my car speed is my car.speed. Right? Let's save that. And we click on this. My car is running false, my car is running true, my car speed is 0. Okay, let's make our car accelerate. So my car that accelerate, right, to 70 miles per hour. And then we can say, let's borrow this again. Let's put that there. And let's see what our car speed is now. When I click on this button, my car speed is now 70 because I have called the accelerate method and told it to accelerate to 70. And now here, let's see, what does break do? I don't have a break method. So let's add a break method, right? Break. And we'll say this dot speed equals 0. So if we come here now, we can actually ask the car to brake. So you can say my car dot brake. And if we now log the speed again, you see that we start the car, the speed is 0. We accelerate it to 70, so the speed is 70, we brake, the speed is 0. And if we come here, and we now say my car, let's stop, right? Then we can now check this. Okay? Does this make sense? Can you see how this is working out? Anyone?
Yeah, roughly, it makes sense to an extent. Like
So,
it's not something
these
that
are
we'll
proper.
be able to do on our own. You understand what I mean? But it's not completely. It's not magic.
No, it's not. And all of this, you've already learned all this.
Yeah.
This is all stuff you've learned.
Yeah, we learned
This
the
is a-
theory.
No,
You know,
we've
we
learned it in practice. But what we're not doing is we're not connecting with
The
what
dots.
we already done.
Yeah.
Remember, this is assignment.
Mm-hmm.
Like all I've done here is assign and call methods. Right? All I've done is assign.
Yes.
Assign.
Yes.
So I make Honda, I make model Accord.
Yes.
Then I output make a model. I get
Honda and Accord.
Make a model.
You get Honda and Accord. Yes.
Accord. Right.
Yes, that's
So
familiar. That's
already
familiar.
Right. Now I call a method start. This is like calling a function. Right? What does my function do? My start function, all it does is it assigns the value true to this
property.
So when I come here to my object, once I say start, I output the value of that property, which is true.
I see.
That's the very next one. But I output the value of the property first before I call start. So I output the value of the property first, right? When I haven't called start yet. The property is initialized to what? False.
I see.
Which is this line.
I
now,
see.
After I call start.
So start is actually a function, like the function we learned. Just like any other function. That's crazy, man.
A function is a function. That's why I said it's the same JavaScript.
That's crazy.
It's a function. If we say function, we mean exactly the same thing if we say it 1,000 times. A function is a function. A variable is a variable. A property is a variable that is attached to an object. That's the only difference. Is that it's not a variable floating in space. It's a variable with context.
I see.
Make is a variable, but it's make of what? In this case, I say it is a property of car. So what make of car, right? Remember, this is a blueprint.
Yes.
So I used this blueprint to create a new car that I called my car.
I see.
And then I now configure the car. So if I give you a blueprint for a house, yeah, you build the house, but you can choose to paint it red. I give the blueprint to somebody else, to Dapo, and he builds the exact same house. They're going to look identical, but he decides to paint it green. So it will have the same, the same general design, but now he's decided his is green, and you've decided yours is red. But they follow the same blueprint. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
My blueprint defines how many rooms both houses will have. The floor plan will be the same because it's the same blueprint. But you may change the color of walls. It's changing the property. So that's what this is. Is my car object is an instance of the car class, which means it uses the car blueprint. These methods are just functions on it. The function accelerate. What does accelerate do? If I come to my accelerate, just set the value that I pass to it to speed. So whatever parameter, whatever value I pass to the accelerate function is assigned to the speed property. That's all that does. Doesn't do any magic. Okay, let's say for example, if I now say, okay, you know, as a client, I want this car to only stop if it is not moving, right? I don't want you to turn off the engine unless the car is stationary. What would I do? Anyone?
Conditional.
Yes. So I'm going to do a conditional here. So if, and what is my conditional? How do I know the car is stationary?
Speed.
Running.
Speed is 0.
Oh.
If speed equals 0.
Speed should be 0, yeah.
And how do I say speed? Do I just say speed equals 0?
Speed
Is this
assigned
correct? If the speed of what?
of the car.
The speed of the car. How do I say the speed of the car? Is speed a variable or a property?
Speed
Property.
property.
So how do I write this speed for it to be a property? Right now it's a variable.
This dot speed.
Exactly. So this dot speed. Now, what is wrong? What operator do I have here?
Fine. But you need the equivalent.
I
You
need
need
a comparison.
Yeah, like the double. You need the double. Well, maybe actually you might need the triple, since you're looking for the
Equal.
number, not necessarily. You're looking for the absolute, the actual
It's absolute.
numeric value.
Right. Yes, I need the absolutely equal to. All right. So if the speed is 0, then turn off the car, right? And then we can say, oh, I hate when, let's do this. All right. And then we can say else console.log, the car is still running. Okay. And you know, you might want to add some expletives there just to express how displeasure the code is without attempt. All right.
But wait,
So
it says if the speed is equal to 0, then this engine running is false. That means the engine is, the car is off.
Then turn off the car. No, it's not that the car is off. It is turn off the car. You're setting the state of the engine. You're setting the value of this to false.
Okay.
So
You're not outputting that.
You're using the stop feature, which will turn it off. So if the speed is 0, turn it off. If it's still running, then you say the car is still running as whatever. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You don't turn it off. So if we look at that here, look at this. If we come back here, right? We call break, right? We call the break before we call stop. Let's remove break. Okay. And let's save this.
Break.
Yeah. So let's remove break, and we run this. Look, the car speed is 70. We try to stop it. It says, hey, the car is still running. Now we checked whether the engine is running. Yes, the car is still running because we didn't stop it. Now if we now take, I'm gonna cut this. The car is still running. Okay, now let's break it. Let's break, right? And then let's call stop. So after break, we can now call stop because we've stopped the car from moving first, right? You can see the speed, and then we can see whether the engine is running. Let's see how this changes. All right. So the speed is 70. We try to stop the engine. Like, hey, the car is still running. And we can see whether the car is running. Yes, it's still running. So we brake, in which case the speed is 0. And we call stop. We don't get this error on stop. And when we check the state, we see that the car is no longer running. Okay? These are methods, properties. See how in a function you can use a conditional to make it more robust and all of that. Right? The same functions and properties and variables that you've been learning, the same assignments.
It's interesting.
Everything is the same. Nothing new. I haven't introduced this single new concept yet.
Interesting.
Except for the import. Okay? So now, if you remember what functions do, functions allow you to create reusable blocks of code, right? But they also allow you to create invocable blocks of code that you can trigger, that you can call and make happen, right? That's what functions do. So to create event handlers, we use methods on the component class. Remember, a method is just a function. Okay, a method is just a function on a class. All right.
What did you do? Your audio suddenly became much better.
Nothing.
Okay.
All right. So let's get back to this method here. And when I come back here now, and I say this.details, you can see that Studio Code sees I have that property already, equals true, right? And I save that. We're essentially just changing this property to true when we click this button. So if I click this now, voila, it shows up because we have a conditional here. This is a template conditional. If details shown, essentially what this is exactly the same as if details shown equals true. That's the same thing. Okay. If I do that, voila. Okay. Now, if I make this, look at this. Let me show you a trick. I'm going to take this button here, and I'm going to copy it, right? And here, so we have two buttons. But here, for this one, I'm going to say ng if equals not details shown, right? And this one here, I'm going to say ng if equals details shown. Right? And then here, rather than display account details, I'm going to say hide account details. And rather than show account details here, I'm going to create a method called hide account details. Right? What have I done here? Okay, it's complaining because I don't have hide account details. That's what it's complaining. I don't have that. So let's come here. Let's create hide account details for my component. And this is going to be similar here. Hide account details, right? And we're just going to do this here and say this the details shown. You can tell me what the value will be. Hello?
False.
False.
False. Yep, false. Because I wanted to hide, right? It only shows on true. Hold on. It says completed successfully. What am I missing here? Oh, sorry. I did dollar instead of star. Sorry. And that's why it's having errors here. All right. So what I've done here is that when details shown is false, which is what this not, remember the exclamation point is not. Remember that, right? So not true is false, not false is true. Opposite. So what I'm saying here is if details shown is false, show me the button that says display account details. If details shown is true, then this button isn't shown. This button is shown that says hide account details, right? And here we have the account details that only show if details shown is true. Okay? This here, we can rewrite this as and this here, we can write this as true. That's what this means. That's what that is. So let's just make it like that. Is that clear? And so guess what? I only have one button. And the button that shows is the one that says display account details, right? Which is the first one, because details shown is false. If I click on this button, guess what happens? Boom. We get a button called hide account details. If I click on it, boom, it's gone. We have display account details, hide account details.
Check.
You see that? And all we're doing is each button calls a different function, but they're both working on the same variable. One is changing that variable to true. So when I click on this, it changes details shown to true, which shows the div, right? If I click on, and when it shows the div, it hides, the button disappears because it does not show when the value is true. But the button that shows when the value is true now shows up, which is hide. And then when I click on hide, it disappears. Now have a different button that shows up. Okay? So that is that's now a conditional in our template. The same principle, conditional, if else, if else, if else, if, right? We now have the ability to put an if in our template. That's how this works. Any questions? It's a lovely thing. The way you would have to do this in the past, before things like Angular, was a real pain in the butt, right? It was a real pain in the butt. You have to inject into the DOM and remove from the DOM. That if we went that path, I think a lot of people would drop out very quickly. All right. So this is conditional. One more concept that we will explore, and then we'll look at how to create a new component, is, remember when we did flow control, right? We did conditionals, and then we did loops. So how would I do a loop? Right? How would I do a loop? Let's look at that. Let's create an array of property on our component called purchases, right? Okay. So create an array of purchases. And then each purchase is an object, right? It's an item name, right? Let's see. Air Jordans, right? And the price, right? Let's say this is 300. Okay. And then let's see another item. Let's say Nintendo. Right? And the price is 200. And 49 cents. Okay? These are two items in our array. Right? Now let's assume we want to create a list of purchases in our account details. So let's create an ordered list here. Okay, here we're going to create an ordered list, right? And we want to dynamically, now we want to do a loop. We want to loop through that array, right? I want to show you how to do a template loop in Angular, right? So I'm going to say list item, right? And let's say, how do we show, okay, no, before I do a list item, I'm going to say the way to loop in Angular is ng4. Do you now see a pattern here with JavaScript? In JavaScript, we'll do a for loop, right? In Angular, we'll do a star ng4. So in JavaScript, we'll do an if. In Angular, we'll do star ng if. So here, we'll do a for loop, right? So ng4 equals let item of, or yes, we can say let item of purchases, right? And that is our li. And then what happens is that this now exposes a variable for us, an object. So each of these items, each of these objects, right, on each step of the loop is available as item, right? Well, okay, let's say let's purchase of purchases, right? And so we'll say purchase.item, right? Purchase.price. Okay, purchase.item refers to the item property of each purchase. Purchase.price refers to the price property. If I come here and I do this, look at that. My Air Jordans, my Nintendo Switch. Okay, let's make it prettier. Let's not use a list because it doesn't look very fantastic. Let's use a table, right? So let's do this. Let's change this to table.
No, let's use a drop down.
No. Well, we can do a drop down. We'll do a drop down. But let's do a table first. Okay. So we have a table, right? Let's do a table row first, and we'll have th item, right? And then we'll have th price, right? And here now we can now do another. So now instead of us doing an li, our repeat will create table rows, right? And then inside our table rows, we now have a TD, right? For this. And we can now have a TD for that. All right, get rid of this. Let's save that. Here. Yeah. That's our table. Let's say 100%, right? Order. Save that and see our table. Yeah. See that? Okay.
Yeah, see.
Let's assume, okay, now you asked to do a drop down select. Let's make it a drop down select. Here, I'm just going to take this table here. Let's take all of this away. We don't need that. I'm going to change it with a type for select, which is a select, right? And move this down here. Okay, this is we're going to make a drop down select. What a drop down select has are options, right? So option. And you notice our MG4 is still the same because we're still looking over it. Now, what we want here is we're going to remove the TR because we don't need that. And we'll need this, right? And this is option / option. Okay, and let's remove this T. Right, and we just say, let's just put that just a separate. And you know what we have now? It's this. We created a select from an array, and it works. Okay, so that is how you do a loop in your Angular template, ng4. The syntax is simpler than a loop in JavaScript, but it's essentially based off of the for loop. Let this off this, and then we have each item in the array becomes this, and then these are properties on the item. Properties defined here: item and price. Item and price. Any questions? Any questions? Total confusion, totally lost. Where are we?
Lost.
The issue with me is I've forgotten the what's it called, the formula for the loop. So once I refamiliarize myself with it, everything will fall into.
So the syntax for loop in JavaScript is different from the syntax in Angular.
But I mean, yeah, but it's only slightly different, isn't it?
Can you explain, Yinka? Can you explain? I'm getting a little. I'm confusing Angular and JavaScript because you use them interchangeably. Can you try to explain the relationship of the two?
Angular is JavaScript.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Angular is a JavaScript framework, which means you write JavaScript. But Angular is beyond JavaScript because it also includes HTML and CSS. And that is why you have the template part of it, where you work in the template and you have Angular directives, right, that you can use. So for example, this is a template. This is Angular's way of doing a for loop in the template. Because remember, we're working front end now, which means we're working visual. right?
Yes.
If you write all the JavaScript in the world and there's no visual element to it, it's useless to the user trying to use it from the browser. So Angular is where your HTML and your JavaScript come together. Angular brings them together seamlessly.
Gotcha. Okay, makes sense.
Okay, so remember when we had this array, an array like this, where we had people, right? The only way we could look at it was to do console log, console log. Console log is useless to anyone. But
Yes.
you know how we could use an array like this? Is to create a dynamic dropdown, right? We just created this dropdown that's totally data driven. If I wanted to add items to this dropdown, I could just come here and add a row here, right? And I can come here and say, this is a Dell Inspiron. And if I came here, and then I could put a price here, I'll say my price here is 450.35. If I save this now, and I come here, now I have Dell Inspiron. Right now I have 3 items. I didn't change the template because the template is the template. The data is what then defines how the template is rendered. Okay? And what did I do in my template? So I made it loop through my array with the ng4. Okay? When you go online and you make purchases and create a shopping cart, that is what happens. You reach from an array of items you've added to your shopping cart. So if we went back here and we said, okay, when we had the table, let's go back to the table. Right? Let's go back to when it was a table. Remember, we're saying account details, display account details. It's like his purchases. Okay? And so let's say we come here, let's add another H3. Right? And we say what? First name, right? Purchases. Okay? I save that here, give that context. This is his purchases. We have a list of purchases. Right? Now, let's say, let's do one last thing here before we end this. And I want you guys to work with me through doing this. Here's what we want to do. For these purchases, right, we want to calculate the tax. We're going to use the tax rate in Maryland, which is 6%, right? So we want to calculate the tax, and we want to display the tax and the total. Okay? So here, we're going to put on our table here, let's add another row, and we'll say TV. Yeah, let's do this TV. I'll call this sales tax, 6%, right? Here. And let's add another one here. So we say this is a 2D, and this is where we display the value of the tax. Sales tax, right? And then let's create another row, TR and TD, strong, right? Grand total, and here, then the TD, strong, grand total. Oh, sorry, grand total. Let's put a $sign here. Okay, so this is our table now. All right, we don't have our grand total or sales tax values here, right? Let's add a button that we'll click to calculate that. So what do? Button. How do we add a click handler to the button? Anyone?
Use an attribute.
Yes. What attribute?
On click.
Right. So once click in parentheses, okay? So let's say calculate tax, right?
Yeah.
And it's a function, so we're calling that function. All right? Calculate tax. All right. And then let's just say type equals button, just because they're different types of button. And then we'll say calculate total or calculate tax. All right, so we'll save that. We have this button now. Now we have to come here and add that method. So calculate total. So here, we create a method called calculate total, right? And then we loop through here. So let's create properties that we can use to show the tax and the total. So we need a property called total, no, grand total, I think that's what we call it, right? Grand total equals 0, and then tax equals 0.
The total is wrong. Grand total.
Okay, yeah, let's see, what do we have here? Sales tax, okay. What's that called? Okay, so grand total, and this is sales tax. These are the properties that we were outputting, right? Remember what you have in here, in your double curlies, is a property. These are properties, right? If you don't have parentheses around after it, it's not a function. If it's a function, it's like this. Okay, so let's quickly do this. All right, so what we want to do is we want to look through, right, the purchases, right? So we're going to say for, now this is the JavaScript for what we were talking about. Let's I equals 0. Remember how we look through an array, right? Sorry, parentheses here. Let I equals 0, I less than this dot purchases, right? Dot length, I plus plus. You recognize that, right? And then we're going to say let purchase equals this dot purchases I. No, not parentheses, 4 brackets, because we're looking through an array, right? So that gives us the purchase, right? And then we'll now say this dot grand total plus equals purchase the price, right? Remember this? You're adding to, or you're incrementing by what comes after. And then we're now going to say this dot sales tax equals this dot grand total, right? 6% times 6/100, right? That's 6% or 0.06, if you will. That's 6%. And this does it. Now we have our method. What do we need to calculate tax? Oh, yeah, calculate tax. So that's what we can calculate tax. Another thing is the Angular CLI is very helpful. So now if I come here, now I open this, I have no total and no tax. I have this that says calculate tax and total. If I click on this, voila. I have my total 950 and my tax 57.054. Okay. And we can come here. Let's put a $sign beside the tax. Sales tax is this. Okay, click this button and have that calculation happen. Anybody wants to do the math to see whether this is 6% of this? It is.
It is.
Yep. So look at this. We've created like a shopping cart off of an array of items. An array of purchases. Right. This is the kind of thing. This is a web application. This is dynamic. This data could come from a database served by an API. Think about it. So this is how you now display this, right? If we wanted to, we can take, and I mean, our time is up, so I'll end the class. But just imagine the possibilities for this. I could come, let me show you something. I could take a library. You know how Angular is a library? We can npm install another library. Let me show you. And we're going to do this in this course. Not today, but we're going to eventually actually do this. We're going to use a library called vmcharts4. And I could take that data here. And I could come and say, hey, okay, I want to say a pie chart, right, of those purchases. This is JavaScript. This pie chart is all JavaScript. And the colors are all configurable. This is data-driven. If you want to look at the JavaScript for it, you can just look at this JavaScript and you will be able to read it and understand it. This is a create method on that object. This is a JSON object. This is an array of JSON objects, right? If you look at all this code, you can read this and you can actually copy this and tweak this and all that. It's not magic at all. You can create a chart like this if you want, right? And this is a library. You can npm install it. Here's another chart. And this data that we have here, okay, we could absolutely use to create charts like this. Look, there's even a 3D chart. Look at that. And this is all JavaScript. See that? So if you think about it, you can take the data coming from a database, pipe it to an Angular component like this, right? Pipe it to an Angular component like this. Import that chart library and spit out the chart and just bind with an element here and tell the chart library to work on that. And you can go from just having a simple array like this to having a chart that looks like this with all the interaction and everything. All right. So this is all the reason we had that mad first week boot camp of learning the basics, and just so that we can then just focus on the use of those basics. This is an array. An array is an array is an array. A JSON object is a JSON object is a JSON object. You will constantly see them. A for loop is a for loop is a form, right? If else conditional, if else conditional. Assignment is assignment, right? So my recommendation would be if you want to revisit anything, revisit that first week where we learned all of these fundamentals.
It's crazy how we can't escape this thing, Sha.
Yeah, that's where
Everywhere
that's why
you
you
go.
learned it. That's why you
crazy.
learned it. They're the fundamental building blocks. So far, we haven't done much outside of that first week.
It's crazy.
It is now how you combine that logic. They're logical pieces. Like I said, it's like language, it's like English. If I teach you 10 words, you can combine those 10 words in so many different ways to form different sentences. Some will be meaningless, but some will be powerful, right? The more words you learn, the larger your vocabulary, the easier and more detailed you can express yourself, right? If you learn more words, you can express your ideas and your feelings better. The more words you learn, the better you can express yourself. The more accurately people will understand you. But you have to learn the words first and learn how to string them together. Now, if you learn all the words in the dictionary and don't learn the syntax, don't learn how to put them together, you will say very, very verbose rubbish. You'll speak and no one's going to understand what you said. Okay, so that's kind of how JavaScript works. Learn these basic concepts. There's a lot more complex concepts, but they all build up of these foundations. Once you understand these foundations and you use them, then you'll be able to look at documentation like this. If I ask you to implement this, you don't need to take a class. You can come here and look at the code. I'm like, oh, all right, this is what they do. All right. And in 30 minutes, you know how to do this. Okay? All right. So we'll end the class, but before we stop, any questions about what we did today?
What we've just learned now, if you want to run it, do we put something like a flow? What do you do to it, like to keep it working as on a website or something like that?
Do you put something like a flow in what way?
So like, okay, or loop, or what do I want to say? Like, I was just thinking.
A loop around what?
I don't know. Like, I know that you taught us loop and that that makes it continue. Like, okay, we picked those Air Jordan, the Dell Inspiron, Nintendo Switch. If someone else wants to use the app that we or whatever what we are creating to make purchases, or how will it continue to do the same thing?
Okay. The way this would work in practice, these values here, and this goes to a question that you had asked some classes ago. These values here are hard-coded. Okay? These values here are hard-coded, and what you would do to make this work in practice would be to make this accept input. Right? It would be to make this accept input. So what would actually happen? And I want to end the class, but we can practice it. If anyone's interested, you can stay on. I think you can do another 15 minutes, and I will demonstrate that. Well, I can stop the class now for those who have to leave. But in 15 minutes, we can set this up so that you see how this will actually be used dynamically. Okay? Anyone down for that?
Excuse me, I have a question. So do you have like a finished product of what we are doing, like maybe the one you've done before, and kind of to be able to know what we are actually looking forward to? Now it's looking as if things are still not coming together. The JavaScript class is like a marathon that I personally did not most of it.
Okay.
And now
right, so let me So let me show you this. I'll just show you this. It's only going to be a few seconds, but let me stop recording because I don't want to record. All right. So let's start.